What's up, bro? You know when you have such like a good concept or an idea for like a scene within a story, and then you're so like excited about it, you're like, this scene is gonna change the world. It's gonna change how people think, but it's in like the middle or like the end of your story, and you're like, how do I get people to stick around for that long? I once had this friend who told me, he was like, Nick, watch this anime. Like, it's so good. I highly recommend it. I watched the first episode and I'm not feeling it. And I go back and I tell him and I'm like, hey, I'm just not going to pick up this series. It's not for me. And then he's like, oh, but please watch it. It gets super good in season 4. What a jerk. Like, I mean, I'm not sitting through 3 seasons of television just to be like, wow, you know what? He was right. Like, proper floating in the air. And that's the fear that I have whenever I'm like writing something. Like, I'm like, I know that I can get this audience to care about my characters and the story, but I just need their attention for 5 minutes at the start. And like, if I don't get their attention, I'm like, crap, I'm letting down my younger self, my childhood self, like not being the guy that he thought that I could be. So in order to not let down our childhood selves, let's unpack this. The easiest way to grab an audience's attention and then to have them like proper hooked in is Hitchcock first talked about when he was like, the concept of there is a bomb underneath the table. So he talked about in an interview, he was like, you have 2 characters sitting at a table. They're like talking back and forth, and then suddenly a bomb goes off. It's a little bit shocking for like 2 seconds, but he mentions rewriting this scene, and instead of it just being the 2 characters talking and then the bomb goes off, first or at some point during the conversation, you introduce the bomb to the audience without the 2 characters' knowledge. So now the audience is wondering, like, when is this bomb going to go off? What are the characters' reactions going to be to it? Well, they're going to die, but, you know, it's a bomb. It's the bomb. Like, I'm reminded of 80s movies and 80s TV shows when, like, the cop who just got, like, fired, he handed in his badge, his sunglasses. Like, he would go into a warehouse for a shooting, like, but first he would stop by the trunk of his car and get out like his gun and then like put it on in his waistband. Like, that creates a feeling of excitement in an audience because it's like, oh my gosh, something is about to go down. It's what we call suspense. This kind of suspense works for 2 reasons, because it's like the audience is expecting to see characters' reactions to like this impending event that's about to happen over like the next like few pages or like the next 90 seconds, and like they want to see what the boom looks like. So that movie is goated. But it's this idea of not giving the audience like not like spelling things out for the audience, but letting them take part in the story by figuring out like story plot elements and then like piecing things together as the story goes along. So that way that they get to participate in the story as well as the characters. And it's just a more enjoyable experience like that. So for example, if you have a guy in like a boat and he's fishing, and in this lake or river that he's in, there's this big legendary fish that like people have been talking about. Like, it's like, oh, this is a huge fish, but we, the audience, we've never seen it before. Guy is on his boat. He's got his line in the water, and all of a sudden, like, he gets pulled down to the floor of his boat, like, because his line is being pulled on. He gets back up, he looks, and his line is snapped. We never get to see what snapped the line, what he had on the hook, but it's safe to assume that it's that legendary fish, like a proper legendary Pokemon. I'd also recommend adding red herrings. So red herrings, that's kind of like sticking an object or something that seems of relative importance in the story, sticking that in the audience's face, that way so that they're like, when's this gonna show back up again? Like, however, it just kind of doesn't go anywhere. So it's kind of like the briefcase. So to illustrate this, let's say that a character has a briefcase. Like, he's talking with someone at a table, they're arguing, they're going back and forth, and then all of a sudden he's like, puts the briefcase on the table. Briefcase has a combination lock, so it's like one of those ones that you like, you know what I'm talking about? And like, he starts to unlock the numbers or put in the numbers, and the briefcase unlocks. He opens it slightly, and then he closes it, and then he says, never mind. What the heck was in the briefcase? We don't know. Like, it might not matter. Who knows? So that's kind of what a red herring is, the best that I can kind of. It's designed to keep the audience thinking throughout the story, like, what's in the briefcase? Is it like a gun? Is it money? Like, and then it turns out to be something unimportant. That's a red herring. The Chekhov's gun is another fun one. However, I wouldn't argue that it's as influential as a red herring, because it's like Chekhov's gun, whenever I think of Chekhov's gun, it's like the premise of a movie of like this like action guy has to like stop a nuke, or stop a nuke from getting into the hands of like, I don't know, an enemy, and Top Gun, an enemy, a target. That Chekhov's gun also works quite well. However, it's not, in my personal opinion, as effective as a red herring, because Chekhov's gun, whenever I think of it more in line with like the premise of the story. So like you have an action movie where like a guy has to stop like a nuke from getting into like an enemy's hand. And like my first thought isn't like, oh, I can't wait to see this nuke go off. Like it's more so like I'm thinking about the character being like, can they stop it? Like, can they stop the nuke from getting into this guy's hands? And then the nuke gets in the guy's hands, and then like the countdown starts, and then anyways, you've seen the movie. So that's some things to think about. So later, bro.